So my friends and I have set out on a journey that most people honestly don't even really realize that's happening, and that's the fight for Julian's freedom. It's carried me as far as to do a super awkward interview on Tucker Carlson. But I want to talk a little bit about the people that helped bring all of this together. The Courage Foundation is absolutely amazing. Their support of journalists internationally is second to none. Rebecca Vincent for all of the shortcomings of NGOs and their funders with Reporters Without Borders has been working tirelessly to demand Julian's freedom. We recently had a dissent whistleblower and accountability festival over in the United Kingdom where they had, I think it was over 24 hours of guests and speakers and live whistleblowing taking place over in the UK. Names from someone as simple as people may recognize as Somerset Bean, all the way to the Daniel Ellsbergs and and a bunch of other people in the world. John Pilger, I apologize, gave a wonderful speech there. But there was also people whose names I don't recognize. There was a gentleman who simply was living in the United States post 9/11 that got targeted as a terrorist and had to flee the country. Stories like that are super impactful. Right now, though, this fight isn't just for Julian's freedom. He's not the only person in being prosecuted by the State Department for revealing factual and accurate information. My friends and I do a show that we call the Free Assange Vigil. Some may have seen it, some may have not. Every show we open with what we call the numbers. And it's going through the amount of days that have passed since significant events have happened in regards to whistleblowing and journalism. So let me get those pulled up here because I want to run them through here with you. Some of them are disturbing, some of them are hopeful, some of them just flat out don't make sense. So I'm going to read through these here. My numbers may not be completely accurate, but we try our absolute best to redo them about every 2 weeks just to make sure they're right. We have 3,839 days of illegal and arbitrary detention for Julian Assange. We have 802 days since the WikiLeaks founder was trafficked from the Ecuadorian embassy after being sold to the US and UK for a $4.2 billion loan to the Lenin Moreno's Ecuadorian government. We have 165 days since Vanessa Breitzer's January 6, 2021 ruling denying Julian Assange bail and forcing him to stay in prison after citing fairness to the United States, which came 2 days after that judge personally wrote in her declaration, "I order the release of Julian Paul Assange."
Little Wayne, though,
right? We have we have at this point 1 day free almost for Reality Winner. I don't know if everyone knows who she is or what she does, but she was a whistleblower for the NSA that exposed the absolute incompetence of the intelligence community to the point that they couldn't even identify the source of an email. She has spent the last, 1,464 days in federal incarceration. But I am happy to announce, just as Gabriel did, that today is the first day that she is being moved to a halfway house in preparation for her November 3rd, 2021 release. November 23rd, 2021 release. We have 1,394 days of inhumane detention for the unproven alleged Vault 7 whistleblower Joshua Schultz. At least 973 of those days have been sent under special administrative measures. I don't know if everyone here is intimately aware of what special administrative measures are or the effects that they have on people, but it's these programs that are the explicit reason why the UK refused to extradite Julian. When you're placed under special administrative measures, it is because the Attorney or Assistant Attorney General of the United States made a ruling that says you communicating with absolutely anyone, including your family, is a direct threat to national security. You do not receive newspapers, you do not have color television, and you spend 23 hours a day confined in a cell. You get one 15-minute phone call once per month if the people that you are calling answer in the first time you attempt to call them. those people have to be registered family members, and if you try to reach them on a phone number that is not registered, you can lose your privileges to make that one phone call next month. Joshua Schultz, after spending almost 1,000 days in special administrative measures, which to call solitary confinement is absolutely heinous because it's miles beyond what would qualify for solitary confinement. Joshua Schultz, someone gave an outline of a day in Joshua Schultz's life to a young man named Kevin Gostola of The Dissenter. And in it, Joshua Schultz mapped out how for almost a year now he's been trying to fight the special administrative measures ruling. How he's filed 17 or 18 different requests with the prison, ADX Florence, I believe, Manhattan Penitentiary, where Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself, is where he's currently being held. He has to spend 6 hours in a dog cage in the sun to meet with a loved one. That's not hyperbolic, that's not make-believe. The prison warden, whoever his lieutenant is, escorts him into a field inside of the prison where they place him inside of a 6x6 dog cage while they make sure his family isn't a threat to anyone in the prison. When they're done, Joshua Schultz is escorted back to that dog cage for 5 to 6 hours while the lieutenant lets his family members out. It's been reported that Joshua Schultz has had to urinate and defecate in a bag while waiting in this dog cage for someone to escort him back in. I don't know about anyone here, but I refuse to live in a country where that happens. I refuse to live in a country where someone like Joshua Schultz isn't even proven to be a whistleblower. Where Joshua Schultz is just someone that had access to a computer system where information was leaked from, and he is held up as an example for anyone else that may be in that situation. But I have good news for Joshua Schultz and Chelsea Manning, for Jeremy Hammond, for Commander X, and for everyone else that has struggled in this fight for human liberation. It's not over, right? Getting the no extradition ruling, Niels Melzer points out, is probably a boon to the US and the UK, because the individual states don't have to take responsibility for what's happening at this point. The UK can blame the US for the appeal, the US can blame the UK for keeping him in prison, and there's really no one to blame, according to them. Right, but I want to give everyone here a little bit of perspective. Chelsea Manning, almost 2 decades ago, or a decade ago, was one of 100,000 people with access to that information. 1 in 100,000. Right. Fast forward a little bit, we have a gentleman by the name of Daniel Hale, a whistleblower from, I believe, the NSA. I could be wrong. That exposed the Obama-era drone program, where they were putting Americans on baseball cards, writing out their crimes on the back and flipping through the cards like a game, figuring out who they were going to drone strike. He was one of hundreds of people with that information. Joshua Schultz, whether it was him or not, was one of tens of people with access to Vault 7. One of tens. WikiLeaks and Julian boasted when that information was coming out that they have reached the very center of the CIA. That their ability to expose information is not bound by national security rule, and that those inside are fighting back. Julian actually called it one of the greatest acts of dissent to be a whistleblower, where before we would burn our draft cards, but now people are enlisting in the military specifically and only to be able to get into a position of authority where they can expose these crimes. Chelsea Manning was 1 in 100,000. Daniel Hale was 1 in hundreds. Joshua Schultz was one of maybe tens of people. Their day is numbered. They have nowhere left to hide. When 1 in 10 people with access to the most classified private server in the United States can release information that to this day is still relevant, to this day, we know that those tools are being used by groups like DarkSide, specifically targeting US infrastructure, for whatever means they so choose. Right, this fight, while it may seem hopeless if we look at each individual moment, if you realize that that no extradition ruling was our flag on the beach of Normandy against the fascist bastards, the situation starts to change. Because no battle is won for fun. No battle is won without blood, sweat, and tears. But when we have 1 in 10s of people willing to release thousands of documents, whether it was Joshua Schultz or not, those things must give us hope. Because there are still people fighting. All of us here recognize this threat that's standing against all of us. So I'm gonna have Misty come down and talk for a little bit now. I'll swap out because I'm kind of just rambling at this point. But again, if we can give a round of applause to John and Gabriel, I am beyond appreciative and excited for them to be here touring the United States. So thank you guys.